hopefully everything is still synced up, so we'll try it again. All right, here is take 2. So hey everyone, my name is Brittany Lewis. I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, also an artist, a painter. And this week, or for the next couple of weeks, I want to take you guys on the journey as I create an image that is celebrating faith from past, present, and future for an exhibition commemorating the United States colored troops, specifically their massacre at Fort Pillow. So I'm going to take you through the whole process. This is actually going to be one of my first vlogs, or like the first intentional vlogs. I'm really excited about that. But I was invited to this event several weeks ago, and I did learn about the exhibition, but it was something that I was not sure that my art would be a great fit for until I had the opportunity of speaking to Dr. Hurd, who is the coordinator of this event, and learning about her passion for this specific massacre as it pertains to the history of Memphis, Tennessee, as well as learning about her passion for genealogy and ancestral wisdom and all of the things that come with that. I feel like I really have a great idea or can conjure up a good idea for what to create for this particular event. So as a part of this vlog, there are several steps we're going to need to take to complete this painting. The first thing is that we have to go through the ideation process. We have to figure out what exactly it is we're going to do. We have to thumbnail that idea, gather references, and then draw it. We also have the added challenge of stretching my own canvas. Now, you may be asking why stretch canvas when I'm under such a deadline, because this event is in 2 weeks, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's in 2 weeks. So I have 2 weeks to complete this painting, so why stretch canvas? The number one reason is that because it is so soon and I'm not really sure how the event is going to go, although I have super high hopes, I don't want to spend money for this. I want to be able to use the materials and the tools that I have on hand. And so we're going to stretch our canvas as a part of that. I also feel like stretching canvas is such a very personal touch when it comes to paintings and things like that, especially for something like this. So I am going to be stretching canvas. If I have time within these next 2 weeks, I will proceed to build a frame for it, but if not, we're not going to worry too much about it. But I am going to for sure stretch canvas for it. So we have to take some time to prep canvas, have to make sure that we make it archival so that the image lasts for centuries beyond my life. We also have to again finalize the drawing and transfer that drawing to the canvas, and then finally paint it and deliver it by April 12th. So today is currently March 26th, so we have exactly 2 weeks. So the first step I'm going to take you guys through is the ideation. So I hope that you guys stick around to see exactly how this painting turns out. So let's get started. So we're just gonna jump right into this thing. I have about 16 days to complete this painting, and it seems like a lot of times 16 days, especially if you're on social media and you're seeing people put together projects fairly quickly. But a painting like this would typically take me about a month or more to complete. Some people work on paintings for years, so I don't necessarily have the luxury of time to sort of overthink, which actually works out in my advantage. Now, immediately after talking to Dr. Hurd, I had a idea that I want to explore, and I had my husband and my son pose for the picture, and then I just kind of trying to work through it at this particular point. So the idea that I had was based on 2 pieces of media. One is the 3 of Cups from my project, The Cosmic Aries Tarot, which I created last year, and it depicts a young woman who is surrounded by 3 of her matronly, or sort of the matriarchy of her family. That's her grandmother, her older sister, as well as her mother, and she's going through this coming of age ceremony. The other piece that this is heavily inspired by is a painting by the artist Thomas Blackshear, which is called Common Thread, and in his painting has a similar motif where there are 4 characters, but it depicts threads coming from the heavens, and they reach each sort of representation of different nationalities and races through his illustration, through his painting, right? So in mine, I wanted to sort of tie the two things together because they were pretty similar. I actually just discovered Thomas Blackshear's painting. I think that's really awesome and synchronous that a lot of times artists will have very similar ideas, but I wanted to, of course, make it my own. So in this illustration, I have decided to go ahead and paint a young man as our main subject instead of a young woman that we have in the Three of Cups, and I want him to be surrounded by three of his ancestors, and I want one of them to represent the 60s, so civil rights era, domestic worker. I wanted one to represent the Civil War soldiers for the Union because this is a Civil War themed exhibition, and then the highest ancestor is going to be a Queen Mother type figure, and so I'm really excited about this. I will say that as I am working through it, I'm not as nervous as I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? Sometimes when I'm preparing for a show, like not an art show because this is my first exhibition, but like a convention or something like that, or even commissions and things like that, I'm usually super nervous and like trying to make everything very perfect. And I think that's where having only a few days to do this works to my benefit, because it's forcing me not to worry so much. I'm also just not concerned with whether or not I'll finish this. It's a very strange mix of emotions, because in agreeing to this, I was like, okay, well, I'll see what I can do. And I think I've just kind of adopted that attitude working on this. Now, this is just day one. I ain't no telling what's going to come up in the next few days. And that's kind of the attitude that I'm keeping with it. I just want to see what happens, right? I'm taking the pressure off of myself to get it perfect. I'm taking the pressure off of myself to do like a masterpiece of sorts. I just really want to see if I can get it done in the time. I want to see what I come up with. And I also just want to see what comes next, right? I think that's something I also take with my tarot deck project that I've been working on since 2019. In it, you go through all of these different emotions because it's taken so long, right? So I've been working on it for a very long time. And in that, you get to second guessing yourself, and sometimes we compare ourselves to others. But taking a bit of pressure off of myself, or the result of taking the attitude of I just want to see what happens, does take the pressure off myself. So here's where we are now. Will I finish this thing in time, child? Ain't no telling. Ain't no telling. That's just kind of how I am with it. You know what I mean? I'm doing it for the fun of it, for the love of creativity and all of that. But in this right now, I'm using the 3D models from Clip Studio Paint because I'm creating this digitally in Clip Studio Paint. The reason I do that is because it's a lot easier for me to change proportions and to plan and to erase and clip and do all of the things I need to do as I plan this painting. So most of the paintings that I do, I actually do start digitally. But so I started my 4 characters. I got the proportions as close to what I liked, and then I used the 3D models just to double check the proportions and where I might have needed to move and shift things. I just kind of lined it up with the 3D models and then continued to draw it. So some of this I'm actually going to be doing live. So if you guys keep up with my live streams, I do stream twice a week, and one of those streams, or maybe a couple, child, depending on how far we go, is going to be a feature on the live stream, and I'll probably talk a lot more about my thought process there. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. I don't know where it's going to go, and of all the years that I've been an artist, this is the very first time that I've actually been a part of a art exhibition. So that in and of itself is pretty cool. I ain't got time to even put too much thought into it, So yeah, we just gonna see how it goes and have fun with it. Alrighty, I wanted to drop in with some developments because some things have happened in the process of creating this painting. Now today is Wednesday, so it's been a week since I found out about it. Of course, this is still very last minute, so I'm doing the best that I can to get it done within the time. Last night and this morning, I was messaged through text got some messages from the coordinator and was put into a text thread that pretty much
was an exercise or demonstration in setting boundaries and knowing when to say no and when things are sort of above me at this point. So long story short, I was asked to create some prints for some work that I had done of the United States Colored Troops. As it pertains to, I don't think it pertains specifically to this event, but the subject matter was certainly similar enough that the coordinator wanted to have prints. However, the means by which she had asked for these, there were some issues with the thread, right? It lacked consideration, and also consideration not only for myself just as a person, but also for the time and the energy that it would take to complete the ask that she was asking for. And it just was a hard no, just because I don't have the resources and time to allocate it to complete the task that she asked me to complete. And again, it just felt very inconsiderate. However, we're making some progress on this particular image. I have the canvas stretched, and we'll be streaming here in a bit for Bring Your Own Project Live. So we have the drawing done. Only thing I have left to do in terms of the drawing is to create a light map, which will help me sort of plant the light source and help when it comes time to actually make a unified image, because this is something that I am creating from imagination. So I'll show you here in a bit. I'll see if I can figure out how to turn the camera around. I'll show you what the canvas looks like, and then we'll switch over to the computer so that I can show you guys the completed drawing. So let's turn this around. All right, so we have our stretch canvas. So it is a 24 by 36 inch canvas. I'm super happy with the quality of it is really nice. I did about 3 layers of gesso after sizing it, which means that you add, traditionally it's rabbit glue. You would add rabbit glue to it, and then you would add some kind of medium to bind the paint. I did not use rabbit glue. I used a chemical from Golden called GAC 400 to size the canvas, and then I added a layer of GAC 100, which is an acrylic polymer, and then a couple of layers of gesso. So we got that done. We got the canvas going. Alrighty, so I want to show you guys what we are working with on the computer, and then I will actually go through the process of making the light map for this. So the light map is pretty much going to involve me doing a quick grayscale sort of pass over or painting over this drawing, so that I know exactly where the light source is going to land and hit when it's time for me to paint it, because right now it's just a drawing. I know that I want the candle that the young man is holding to be the main light source. I can use the 3D models, and I may do that, so you guys may see some of that here in a bit as I try to figure out how I want the lighting to affect all of the other characters. And that's probably going to be the smartest thing for me to do, but we'll kind of go into it. But before we do, I want to show you exactly what I have. So you guys may notice that there is a grid present on our illustration. Now, there are going to be a couple of different ways that we can move this digital illustration onto the actual canvas. We can use a projector, but I don't have a projector, right? We can also just redraw this from scratch on the canvas and use this as like a guideline to redraw and not worry too much about getting it exactly accurate and all that. We're just redrawing it. That is a way that we can do it. We can use transfer paper in order to move this drawing over, but one of my favorite methods is a grid system, right? So anytime I do portraits, if I start the portrait digitally and then I move it over to the canvas, I will use a grid. I will create a grid on top of whatever it is that I draw digitally, and then I will take that and transfer it to the canvas. So I'll make an equivalent grid on the canvas, and then I'll fill it in. It's like painting by numbers is the best way to describe it. So across the top, there should be 24 boxes, and going from top to bottom, there should be 36 boxes. And so I'll label those 1 through 24, and then A through Z, or A through Z and then some if they're, of course, more than that. Or I could do 1 through 36 and then A through Z going across the top. However I decide to label it, I will do a matching label on our canvas. And then I'll just go box by box and I will draw in each of the lines as they are. So that requires a couple of things. It's important to have very clean lines. So right now things are very sketchy, and it has a pencil sort of structure to it. So I kind of have to decide if I want to take the time to create clean lines, or if I just want to just keep it as it is, and not worry so much about it, because again, we're dealing with a time constraint. But that is certainly something that I can do. The other thing that I'm going to be doing, of course, again, is going to be the light map, because this is something that I'm pretty much drawing from imagination. I want to make sure that I have a unified illustration. I want to make sure that not illustration, but a unified painting, making sure that everything makes sense within the context of this painting, and it actually reads the way that I want it to read. So I can turn off these. I'll turn off the grid just so you guys can get a good idea of what the finished drawing looks like. Now, for the little boy, I used my son as a model. Now, this little boy does not look exactly like my son, but I can't help but see him. So I tried to find another child on Pexels, which is a royalty-free photo sort of website where you can get images and to use as references and things like that. So I tried to take features from the little boy, but I still, for whatever reason, I still see my son. It doesn't look like my son, but it also does. I don't know, maybe because I used him in place, or a picture of him from a couple of years ago in place. But this is pretty much the drawing. So it started with the blue sort of basic drawing, and this took on a couple of layers. This is based on a pose that I had both my husband and my son do for me. So they filled in. I did a very crude Photoshop version of them, sort of, or of my husband sort of placing his hands around my son, and then my son was actually seated in the original reference that I was drawing from. However, when I went to draw this, it didn't really make sense proportionally to have him seated. So I actually used an older image of him that I had taken about 2 years ago of him standing. He's about the right age for this piece, so I just kind of used that as my go-to reference. Now, once I got this drawing completed, the blue drawing, I actually went ahead and used the three-dimensional models, which I'll turn on here just so you guys can see, to make sure that the proportions were right? So I wanted to make sure that the arms were the correct length, that they were proportionally pretty correct. The arms were really the only thing that I needed to adjust and change, and that seems to be something that I have trouble with doing. If I'm not like outright measuring a like an exact reference, I'll get the arms a little bit shorter than they are. So that's the only thing that I did in terms of fixing the proportions with the three-dimensional models. Now, what I would ideally like to do is to use these models again and put them all on the same layer, and then adjust the lighting around those models. When I went to try this earlier, I found that the way that Clip Studio handled this was that they kind of clipped the model, so I'm not able to make the same adjustments that I was once they were like actual live models, and that's okay. So what we can do is create another setup. It doesn't have to be exact, it just kind of has to have the general posing, and then I'll be able to sort of move the lighting around to see where the light hits in conjunction with this candle, as well as the ambient light around them. And excuse me, I'm a little stopped up. So I'm still recovering from something, child. I don't know what it was, but anyhow, that's how I used the 3D models. Now, on top of this blue drawing, I actually went and tightened things up and added the details to it. So I added costuming to each of my characters. For the Civil War character, I wanted to make sure that I had as close to accurate as possible in terms of what he's wearing, his accessories, the things that he's carrying. With the domestic servant, with the maid, I wanted to make sure that I had references that fit her as well. And then with the Queen Mother, same thing. So I wanted to make sure that these people felt like different moments in time. And I also wanted to make sure that our main character, who is a little boy, felt very modern, so that we know that these are his ancestors that are surrounding him, and he's also feeding them through his light, right? So I have that. And so anytime I turn off the blue light, we kind of have the finished final product. Now, with the blue sketch, that was not the final form. Of course, I had to adjust proportions even further because the posing from the blue felt a little bit unnatural, and so move them around so that it felt like they were actually standing there. So I'm really happy with it. Now, again, the only thing I have left to do today on this drawing is to create the light map, and then we'll I'll turn on my grid, I'll print that off, and then I will redraw that on my canvas. So I don't want to hold you guys. I'm going to turn off the camera here, and so we could just get to work. Y'all don't have to be distracted by my face. Then maybe at the end I'll come back and kind of show you what I've done. So that is where we are so far. I'm really excited. Again, based on the conversation that I had with the coordinator, I don't know if how this is going to go, but regardless to how that turns out, I want to make sure that I get this painting done, because I've made it this far. I've put quite a bit of effort, especially when it comes to stretching canvas, because I think that is such a personal thing to do for any image that we're working on. So want to make sure I did that. Want to make sure that I am giving the best that I can give within my own sort of ability to do so, and I don't want to put more on my plate than I can handle. So it's definitely important to say no where you have to say no. It's okay to do that, and again, to take on just as much as you can handle. So we're gonna do light map. I'm probably gonna play with the 3D models on a separate file, just so you guys can have an idea of what that will look like, and then we will play with the lighting and do a super quick, super dirty black and white sort of pass over, just so I can see where the light hits our characters. All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna turn myself off, and then we'll come back at the end and I'll give you a little bit of an update. All right, so I have my light map completed, and I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. So basically what I did was I painted, or I used the bucket tool to create a solid gray layer, and then I just erased wherever I want the light to show. So I'm using a candle as my main light source, and I wanted it to touch the clothing of the 3 surrounding people. So it looks pretty good. I'm really happy with it, and it also gave me some direction for the tone. So when it's time for me to actually paint on the canvas, I'll have sort of like a baseline tone, an overall tone of the piece. Now remember that the bottom is going to be kind of painted up so that they feel like they are a part of the atmosphere, not necessarily physically there. Also, earlier today, I don't know why, but the idea came to mind to perhaps collage some newspaper clippings on the background of this piece. Specifically, I found many years ago, my mom sent me an article for my great grandfather who was in World War One and came back with some money, right? And went to track down this article, and the link that I had was no longer available. I was able to actually find it on the Library of Congress, so I'll show you guys it really quickly. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty excited about it. Excited to have found it. Now, this article goes back to 1919. There is so much interesting sort of tidbits in this particular article, in this particular newspaper, things that I found really interesting considering the city and the time in which this newspaper was released. But specifically the article here about Percy Davidson, who is my great grandfather. I have read this article maybe twice, I would say. I haven't spent a whole lot of time reading it, but I have read it twice, enough to not have missed too much. But one of the things that stood out to me this time was the fact that they mentioned the plantation in which his father was a servant, as they called him. They called him a formal servant, but he was an enslaved man. They gave his name. They gave the name of that particular farm. They also gave some hints for things that I can kind of look up just to kind of research more about this particular plantation. Specifically, there was mention of a contest that the servants were to enter in, and my great grandfather's father entered into that, but the contest came to a halt because of this event that my great grandfather participated in. So I found it really interesting, and I did have the idea of tying that into this painting some kind of way. So I did figure out maybe I could like do a collage or something. I'm not really sure yet if that's something that I want to do. However, I just found that interesting. It's also timely and also fits with the theme of this painting, and it helps me to kind of take care of the background. So I can do that. I can also include census records and things like that I can actually print out on newsprint, collage it to the background, paint over it, and still have some sort of representation of those events in places and times and things like that. So I found that super interesting. So this is the light map. Now my next step is to actually go back to the canvas, which I showed you guys earlier, and create the grid. So again, the grid for this particular the size of this drawing is a 6x9, so it is 4 times smaller than the final product. The final product is a 24x36. So when creating the grid for this image, the main thing that I wanted to do was make sure that I created a 1/4 inch grid, right? That way, if I blow that 1/4 inch up 4 times, it'll give me a full 1 inch grid, and then I can just again transfer it over. I'm not really sure yet if I'm going to show you guys how that works. If you would like a standalone tutorial about how to use grids to transfer drawings or to like redraw certain things, it could be if you're studying photographs, because you could do the same thing. You can create a grid off of a photograph and then draw it onto your canvas and then paint from there. So if you're interested in learning more about the grids, let me know. The other thing that I showed a little bit earlier was me using the 3D models to set up the light map. Now, of course, it wasn't perfect because, again, I am using the candle as a light source. So as I'm using this candle as a light source, I'm trying to sort of mimic it a little bit, so I was able to kind of tweak it. But once we get the grid over to the canvas and get the drawing transferred over, then it's just going to be a matter of painting this image. So again, I have until next Friday to have it done, so it's very close. But you know what, I'm gonna say this: even though it's close, even though I've had some sort of hiccups, and it's always the people, right? It's never really the work, it's usually the people that cause sort of hiccups and headaches and things like that. However, with all of that said and done, I still really enjoying the process of creating, and I don't, even though I'm under a super tight deadline, I don't necessarily feel rushed, right? Which is really strange, because typically with something like this, I'll like be panicking and, again, people pleasing and trying to like make sure that I make everyone else comfortable, while also trying to do the best work that I can. In this case, regardless to whether or not this piece is shown or sold or any of that, I'm just really enjoying the process of creating it, enjoying the process of drawing something new. Again, I had no idea that I was going to be drawing this 2 weeks ago. I didn't even see it for myself. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it certainly was a thought that I had in my mind. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. It'll be same day for y'all because, of course, you're watching the vlog, but it may be tomorrow for me. But I'll give you guys an update of the grid and show a little bit of B-roll of that process. So, yeah, let's get into it. Alrighty, so the progress we're making is looking really, really good on this particular drawing or transfer onto canvas. So pretty much what I did was to create a grid, and I'll show you that in just a second, but the canvas is full of a grid. I'm gonna go all the way up if I can. There you go, where I have all of my letters, and then to the side there are going to be numbers. So it is numbered in a way that helps me match up my drawing to the grid itself. So I'll show you what that looks like. So we're working on this area here, right? So I'm working to get, so that's where this is. So this is here, and I'm working on finishing up the drawing so that today I will have the ink outlines. So the goal is to have the outline in ink and then eventually paint. Fingers crossed today we'll start the painting project. But so with the drawing that we did on the computer in Clip Studio Paint, I created a grid on top of that. Now, of course, this was sized to 6x9 in Clip Studio, and then the grid is a 1/4 inch thick. So all of the little squares are just a 1/4 inch. Of course, I blew it up just so I could see the lines and everything a lot better. But once I got to this point, all I did was I went A through X across the top and then 1 through 36 to the bottom. And then I created the exact same thing here on the canvas. And I don't know if I'll be able to get you guys. There we go. I'm on like a little mic arm, but along the sides are all of the numbers. And so again, I just kind of match up whatever it is I created here. I try to match it up as best I can on the canvas itself. So let's see. So for instance, again, this line represents this line, and then of course the character here is here, but in each of the boxes I draw whatever is inside the box onto the canvas, and that's how I'm able to sort of get it as close as possible to my original drawing. Now, of course, when it comes to the little boy figure, there were some slight changes. So he does look slightly different, just a little bit different from the drawing. He actually looks a lot more like my son than I intended it to be, but again, because we're under deadline, it just is what it is. I'll try to change up like his complexion to make it slightly different, but feature-wise, he does look like my son a lot. So, it just kind of gives you, you give yourself a little bit of room for grace and all that. So when we come back, I'll show you guys again once I have the top completed, and then after that we'll go through the process of outlining in pen, in a waterproof pen. I usually use the Faber-Castell 1.5 inch marker. It does really well, and then we'll start to paint. So my idea, I'm still thinking about having the newspaper clippings as a part of the background, so I'll probably start with toning the canvas first, because I think I want to try, because again I'm under deadline, toning the canvas will help me have a unified palette, meaning I cover the canvas in one color. I'm thinking it's going to be an Austrian sienna, which is a really nice golden brown color that'll kind of help reinforce the glow that we're going to have from our character's candle. And then once I do that, I'm thinking about adding some newspaper clippings to the background and then just finishing that up. And so all I would have to worry about is going to be, of course, rendering out the characters. But now, again, doing the underpainting with the unified color is going to help everything be unified in tone, but also it'll help me reduce the amount of paint that I'll have to use to cover it. So it'll kind of add a layer of opacity, because some acrylic paints are translucent, and so having that undertone underneath is going to help me sort of in that regard as well. So I'm really happy with the way that it's coming together. Okay, so I'll see you guys in just a bit once I finish up the last figure. I have to do her hand, her right hand, and then I also have to do her face and her like clothing and all of that. So all of these like blank squares in the middle are going to be filled up with lines here shortly, and then we'll see how it goes. Now again, if you guys want me to break down this particular process a little bit further, creating a grid and sizing your canvas to fit, whether you're drawing this on a separate piece of paper or if you're drawing this digitally, and just sort of using a grid to transfer one image or blow it up or expand it or whatever the case is, let me know, and then we could do a whole separate breakdown on how that works. All right, so I'll be right back. All right, so we have, just want to pop in with a quick update. I have finished the sketch from the grid, and I'll show you guys on screen probably what that looks like. So we pretty much did a grid system for the illustration, not the illustration, for the painting, and then I transferred that onto the canvas. So the canvas is done. Now today is Saturday. This has to be done by Thursday so that I can drop it off on Friday. So definitely doing it all for the plot. So I'm going to flip the camera around so you guys can see what it looks like so far, and then I'll explain to you the next steps, and then we'll get it done. All right, let's turn this thing around. Okay, so we have successfully again transferred the drawing onto the canvas, so it looks really good. I'm super happy with it. So the next steps that we have is that I need to do a waterproof outlining of this illustration. Now what I have found just sort of drawing the drawing in on the canvas is that because of the gesso that I use, which was something I had to kind of pick up last minute, it wasn't my normal Jerry's Artarama gesso, it was actually Artist Loft, so it looks like this. So it's really inexpensive gesso. I don't mind the gesso so much. It was smooth. It has a very smooth surface, so I don't know how well it would do with oil paints, but for the acrylics it should be okay. The downside is that with this gesso, it made it extremely difficult for me to erase the lines on the canvas, specifically the grid lines. So that's going to pose a slight challenge in making sure that I'm able to hide those. So normally when I have a grid, what I would do is draw everything such as this. I would I would actually outline it first with the dark waterproof marker, and then I would try to erase as much of the grid as possible. The other obstacle is that this canvas isn't quite as tight as I would like for it to be. I can fix that by spraying the back with water, but I really wanted to wait until I had the outline at least done to do that, just in case it causes the graphite to bleed. In theory it shouldn't, because we did the sizing with the GAC 400 as well as the prep with the acrylic 100. So, and then three layers of gesso. So in theory, it shouldn't cause an issue at all. I just don't want to take the chance until after I've done all the outlining. So today, my goal, and today again is Saturday, so I have to have this done by this coming Thursday. But today my goal is to outline, do a wash, and I probably will be using Australian Sienna, which is by a brand called Matisse. I got that from Jerry's Artarama some years ago, but it is a very beautiful golden sort of warm brown. Not quite brown, but it is a very golden color. And so I'll do a wash of the whole canvas with that particular color. And again, I'm expecting a little bit of bleeding, because again, I would typically erase all of this excess graphite, but because I cannot, or I can't get it to erase to my satisfaction, I'm not even gonna worry about it. Once I have that done, I'm going to paint the background. So the goal with the background, the color that I'm thinking of going with is going to be red. And then I mentioned earlier in this video, I think, or on live, I'm not really sure, about using newspaper as a part of the background. So I printed out this article. This is of my great grandfather, Percy Davidson, who was in the military, who came back rich. And I have a couple other articles that I want to sort of put somewhere in the background. I'll also be using gel medium to make it red as well. Now, to get this effect, what I did, I had this old newsprint sketch pad. I've had this thing, I know, maybe 16 years or so, 15, 16 years. It's been a minute. May not have been that long. It's been over a decade. I've had this particular pad for a really long time. So it has that sort of gray. It's already a toned paper, but it has that sort of not graying, but like oxidation around it, which was really nice. So what I did was I went into Affinity Photo with the article that I had gotten from the internet, and I adjusted the levels on it so that I could make it less gray, so that when it printed, it actually printed like it was a part of the actual newspaper. So I'm still really thinking about incorporating this article, as well as some other sort of positive news types of articles wherever I may be able to find them, into this, because although the event again is centered around remembering the massacre at Fort Pillow, my art tends to sort of emphasize positive things, because we're so inundated with the negative, especially from our collective negative traumas and things like that. So the reason why I really enjoy this article so well, first of all, it's just neat to see one of my ancestors in the newspaper. There are so many layers to this particular article. The first thing is that they mention his father, who was a servant on Altamee Farm. I know that his father had been sold through slavery. I think they said 5 times or something like that. So to be a son of a former slave who was able to come home from World War I as a rich man, right, I think speaks to him being able to do more than his, be the next sort of step up, right? Where his father did the best that he could. Now he was able to do the same. Now, the way in which he got them riches, you know what I mean, was the way he got them, right? But even in this, speaking about him, there was a lot of disrespect in terms of calling him boy. This is a grown man. They would call him boy. He had to actually go get permission from a white man that he knew in order to access the money that he had, that was rightfully his. He had sent home to his wife, who was my great grandmother, and so he was not able to sort of retrieve that money, but he spoke still with so much confidence and so much assuredness in himself. And so I think this article itself is really, really interesting. It's definitely one of those things that I don't know, I'm excited to incorporate. So I want to try to find similar such articles where, the highlight is something positive, despite the challenges that we had during that time. So we're going to get to that. So my next steps again are to outline this in a waterproof marker and then do a wash, and then we'll work on the background. If I can get it, I have to manage my time. So my goal is to do a character a day. If I can do that, I know I'll be able to meet the deadline. So stay tuned. We'll be back. I'll shoot some footage and show you guys the process.
Alrighty friends, it is 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon and I have to have this completed by tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I have to have it dropped off by tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. It has come together really well. Now, I did not record a lot of the painting process just because it was taking a lot of time to set up and then have to get like the right angles and make sure the camera wasn't in my way. So I did not record the painting process. But if you guys have been keeping up with me on other social media, as far as Facebook, Threads, Instagram, even YouTube here on YouTube, I have done some like doing it for the plot videos just to show a little bit of an update of where we are. So I just finished with the shirt of the young man and the candle. The candle was surprisingly challenging, and I think really the issue was just because I'm sitting so close to the actual image itself. Through the camera that I'm recording on my phone, it actually looks really good. I was having a difficult time creating sort of that light and shadow in the candle itself, but it looks good from here. I am going to be working on the soldier's hands because otherwise I am finished with the soldier. Just needed to do his hands. But before I did that, I wanted to get my young man's fit done. Right, so I wanted to get him his shirt done so that I could do the light and shadow under the hands of both the granny character as well as the soldier. So far I really like this. I did a little bit of a yellow wash over top of his shirt to go over the candle as well, and that again becomes our light source. Now I did exaggerate the light source quite a bit because I wanted them to feel like they were being lit by the young man, so I exaggerated it in the characters, but overall it looks good. So it is 3 p.m. on Thursday. I gotta have this done tonight. The beauty of working with acrylics is that they do dry extremely fast. They do take some colors do take a little bit longer than others, which is why I went on and did the background first, the red background, because it is taking quite a bit of time to cure. So when I let that down onto my canvas, I noticed that it still sticks, and I did the background maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago. So by now it should be okay. Luckily we're working with acrylics. That was definitely on purpose so that I could get this dropped off tomorrow. The exhibition is Sunday, so that'll be fun in a couple of days. So I'll be able to show you guys what it looks like on the wall. Hopefully I'll be able to get some footage tomorrow when I go drop it off. We'll see how that goes. But this is all we have left to do is our young man's face, the soldier's hand, and then Queen Mother's outfit. So once I finish the soldier's hand, I'm going to work on her outfit so that I can do the head of the young man last. Faces do not take me very long at all, and also because the robe that the Queen Mother has kind of intersects his head a bit, just because on the flat surface, I had to draw that in sort of at the same time. It'll be easier for me to do that, just like I did the background for the painting. I'm going to treat her outfit as a background, so it'll be easier for me to get her background done and then do his face, and then we'll be ready to go. So I may check in here at the end. I'll probably give it another 4 or 5 hours or so before I am done. So I'll check back in with you with some more progress in just a bit. One more time for the plot. I'll probably continue to do this because I really enjoyed it. But for those of you who are new here, I had about 2 weeks to create a brand new painting for an exhibition that is taking place Sunday. I had to have this thing done by today. I was definitely on a tight deadline, but I finished it. So I wanted to show you guys what it looks like top to bottom. I'm super proud of it. We're gonna see how this exhibition goes. Technically, this is my first one. So I've been a professional artist for quite a long time. This is the first time I'm participating in an actual exhibition. Now, is this perfect? No, but I am really proud with the way and happy with the way that it turned out. So I hope you guys like it. Let me know if you did. If you didn't, keep it to yourself. Until next time, peace. Chattanooga, Tennessee, but I am here in Memphis, Dr. Hurd. I'm here in Memphis. I've been in Memphis for about 20 years. Okay. So when I first got the call from Dr. Hurd, I'm gonna tell you how coincidences work. So I'm a practitioner of ancestral veneration. So I'll call on my grandfathers and my grandmothers to, get a little bit of guidance, to get a little bit of, just a little help when I'm feeling down. Mm-hmm. So before I got her call, I had talked to my favorite ancestor, whose name is Alated Hurd. Exactly, that's my grandfather, Alated Hurd. And so time went by, I got the phone call. I ain't recognize the phone number, so let me go to voicemail. And so so when I talked to her, my first thing was, I don't know if I got art that fits faith. I was like, I ain't real sure, you know, that's not typically my sort of artistic voice. But it was after I spoke to you and after I had heard your testimony about your work with Ancestry, and just sort of feeling the energy around it, immediately I got an idea. So the painting that I did is a 24 by 36 on acrylic, and this is titled John 14:6. Now I'm not a Christian, I'll admit, but the wisdom of that verse says that I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one gets to the Father but by me. So I wanted to depict a young man holding a light, because I always got that verse confused. I always thought it said light and not light. But I have a young man holding a candle, and I have his ancestors surrounding him. I have a domestic servant from the 60s, because my grandmother was a domestic servant. I have a Civil War soldier, just for the event to tie in the fourth pillow, and also to tie in U.S. colored troops who had fought in Chattanooga, which was my hometown. And then I wanted to take it back to a queen mother figure, because we all come from a woman. And so although they are touching and sort of having hands on this young man, it is through the work that he does. It is through the work that Dr. Hurd does. It's through the work that each of us do as we move forward in our day-to-day to overcome our obstacles, to grow, to learn, to make different decisions, to grow and to elevate, that these people are able to ascend as well. So that is the gist of this painting.
Excellent. Okay, yeah, this is
So as I'm editing this video, I realized I didn't do a recap. I was like so sort of caught up in the whirlwind of putting the painting together and then attending the opening and sort of going about life as it unfolded, that I didn't do a recap for this. But it's been several months since the event took place, and I will say overall, despite any challenges that I may have had, despite the short deadline and all of that, it was a beautiful experience. In it, I learned a whole lot about the history of the city, the history of Fort Pillow itself, which was something I had never heard about. I had only in recent years learned about the involvement of the United States colored troops in my hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee, like a couple years ago. So as I'm sort of learning and gathering more information and understanding history, a lot of things for me are starting to sort of click into place, right? And so in it, I was able to meet people who were here in Memphis during the time that Dr. King was assassinated, and learned what that experience was like and what the city felt like. I learned about the involvement of or sort of the slave trade within the city, and how there are still marketplaces here in the city that are being used, of course, as other things, but they still do exist. And just sort of being immersed in that history and sort of being in a space where it was very community oriented, and I just felt very much like I was in the middle of a warm hug. To put it to you lightly. I grew up around a lot of elders in my life. I was fortunate enough to know my grandmother, who's still living. She's 94 years old. I was fortunate enough to know all of her siblings. And I grew up with my paternal grandmother, so I was fortunate enough to know her and a couple of her siblings as well. But this was the very first time that I actually felt embraced by elders. And it was a very strange thing. I think it healed some part of my inner child. So it was really a nice time. I would definitely do it again. And I will say that I keep saying that this was the first time that I was in an exhibition, but it really didn't dawn on me until much later that this was the first time I've ever been in a museum, right? That I know of. This is the first time I've ever been in a museum. I've actually been a part of other art exhibitions, and for whatever reason, art exhibition and museum was just getting me all tangled up. But I had been in other art shows before, but this was the very first time I had been on display in a museum, and sort of it took a minute for me to appreciate the gravity of that. And from there, I actually got a chance to be in another exhibition as well, just a couple months later. And I think sometimes when we experience certain things, that opens us up to more. And one thing that Dr. Hurd told me when she was talking to me, she was like, "Oh, you gonna do it because you meant to." You know, excuse me. Sometimes we talking to people and we like, yeah, okay, lady. You know what I mean? All right, sure. I'm just gonna do this just to see if I can get it done. But she was so right. And one thing that I really found interesting was something else that she said. She said that over the years in the programs that they hold with the art show portion of this particular program, that none of the artists know each other and none of the artists see the art that the other artists create, but somehow they all go together. And when I was there, it was almost as if we were all in each other's minds, right? So when I was presented with the theme of this, my initial inclination was like, I don't have anything that deals with faith because I'm not a religious person. I don't make religious artwork. You know, my mind went to religion, right? So I was like, I make tarot cards, you know what I mean? All esoteric and occult types of pieces when I'm making art for myself. And so I was like, I have nothing, you know, on hand that fits that particular theme. However, I did come up with something, of course. And as I sort of walked the wall of art that was on display during this exhibition, I noticed that they were all tied together. And I was not the only one that was like far out, you know, Afrofuturism, all of that. And so I think that each piece told a story that lent itself to the next piece. And I found that so interesting because, again, I had never met any of these people, right? I had never met any of the artists, any of the attendees or anything. We were just sort of fish out of water in this very new experience. And yet we were all able to sort of come up with something that went together. So it was a really nice experience. Of course, I know earlier in the vlog, I had a couple of hiccups and wasn't really sure how that was gonna go because I'm like, I'm already under pressure and I was sick. I'm sick now. You know what I mean? Full circle moment, but I was sick at the time, and so I was having those challenges. But I think all in all, it really came together, and it was a really nice time. I wish that I could have been there when they did the burial ceremony, or sort of the celebration. I think they did a 21 gun salute at the grave sites of the soldiers and not just soldiers, the women and children who were sacrificed at Fort Pillow. But maybe next year. But yeah, it was a great time. I really want to do more of these. But yeah, so if you've made it to this part of the video, I know it's been a long one, but if you made it here, please leave me a purple heart. That lets me know that you made it to the end. If you like these kinds of vlogs, I have more projects, all right? I have so much art to do. I think sometimes we vlog or we get into vlogging. I know I fall under the trap of thinking, well, my life is not super interesting. But if you would like to see more of these types of art vlogs and behind the scenes of putting together pieces and sort of what the day in the life of a professional artist is like, let me know. I would love to hear from you down in the comments. But again, if you made it to this portion of the video, be sure to leave me a purple heart. And if you like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button because that helps YouTube know that you appreciate it and you think other people would like it as well. And please be sure to subscribe. Until next time, peace.